Ragnar is an ugly and disgusting pathetic loser who lost all his family to dragons, forcing him to train to become the strongest dragon hunter with godlike abilities. In this world, dragons are superior in strength and skill because they have an ancient magical blood. There was only two ways for a human to kill a dragon. They could expose it to the sunlight or slay its heart with silverine, a material that could freeze a dragon when it contacts its mana. As a result, those who had the skills to kill dragons became dragon hunters. However, the dragons were still easily able to attack cities and kill people. Millions of people died, including the dragon hunters in the kingdom, except for one, Ragnar. He was the only survivor. He found out where Ultimacia, the leader of the dragon bloodline, would be and confronted them. He was determined to take them out for everything they had done. He hated them with all his guts, but they beat him up badly and defeated him. He was weak. He was just an ugly and an orphan, just an all-around loser. His parents were eaten by dragons when he was 3 years old, and some of his relatives took him in. A day later, they were also eaten by dragons. He was then sold to a wealthy family, and a few months later, guess what? Dragons appeared and ate them too. In the end, not only did he become homeless, but he even started to get bullied. After all, dragons appeared whenever he was around and killed everyone except him. It was as if he was cursed to watch everyone he cared about die. And after 8 years, he was still cursed. Sure, he was defeated by the bloodline, but he was still alive, which made him want to die. Even the dragons wanted to clap him, but Ultimacia stopped them. She knew Ragnar's past and how many times he survived against dragons. She believed it was God's will, and if it was God's will, then it could only mean one thing. God wants Ragnar as its new servant. Ultimacia makes a blade of her blood and stabs him. She explains that he will now forget everything because from now on, Ragnar will become a dragon. Ragnar screams in pain as the dragon's blood starts mixing with his body, making him feel as if he's burning up from inside. But that's not all. All his memories, fears, and hatred are slowly fading away, until one person comes to his mind. Her name is Lenica. He met her when he was getting bullied, and she saved him by defeating the bullies. She introduced herself as a dragon hunter and asked him to join her. He was scared that she would die too and he'd be left alone again. But she assured him that she was stronger than dragons, so she wouldn't die. Only the weak die. Ragnar had finally found someone who would survive with him. They teamed up and went dragon hunting together. But Lenica was doing most of the work since Ragnar was a coward. She owned the inferior dragons for years and became the best dragon hunter in their city. She also became Ragnar's hero. He no longer thought he was cursed, and it was all thanks to her. So, he dedicated himself to taking care of her. He was still a weakling, but he wanted to be a useful weakling to his hero. He even trained in secret, though he didn't have the talent for dragon hunting. He'd never be like Lenica, but as long as he could help her before he dies, it was fine by him. One day, the city was attacked by a superior dragon named Grimwelt. After Donapiru fell, Lenica immediately went out to fight, and Ragnar following her behind. People were dying left, right, and center. Ragnar spotted Grimwelt, who used blood magic, which he could manipulate into blades or flames. He ambushed him, but his sword broke on impact. Grimwelt counterattacked with blood flame and threw him into the river. Lenica saw this and became extremely angry. She confronted Grimwelt for hurting her Ragnar, threatening to clap him. She charged and fiercely fought against him. But he wasn't as easy as the inferior dragons she would kill in 1 or 2 strikes. He wasn't even using his full power, but she was left exhausted without even making a dent on him. He was so strong that she even wondered if he was the dragon god. This angered Grimwelt. He was offended on the dragon god's behalf. How could she compare a lowly dragon like him to their mighty kid god? He attacked her with his blood flame, but she was always alert in battle, so she quickly got out of the way. Grimwelt then decided to school her on the dragon kind. He was the 10th seat of the bloodline, making him the lowest grade superior dragon. He even told her the reason why the kingdom would be destroyed. Lenica was shocked to hear that their lives depended on the mood swings of a little girl. To the dragons, the attack wasn't even serious since dragon hunters aren't a threat to them. That's how insignificant humans were. Grimwelt casually laughed and attacked Lenica again. Unfortunately, he clapped her. Ragnar had been rescued from the river and had woken up already. He saw it all happen, and his whole life changed. His hero had died before him, so it seemed that the curse was still there. Grimwelt went on to wipe out everyone in the city, but Ragnar survived. He was absolutely devastated and grew so much hatred for the dragons. He went on a quest to clap every dragon in existence. He wanted revenge, so he trained tirelessly over the years. He even almost died many times, but he kept going. He made new companions, but they all ended up dying while he survived. He kept losing people around him, but he never stopped. He didn't suffer his whole life just to get turned into a dragon by Ultimacia. So, he stopped the ritual by stabbing his heart with his silverine sword. This resulted in his death. Ultimacia was disappointed and left with her bloodline to do more work. Right after, Crimson, the previous dragon monarch, arrived and revived him. Crimson left before Ragna wakes up. Ragna goes back to training even harder. But he still lost most of his battles. He was not strong enough yet. However, he slowly started winning until he always won all of his battles. He did this for decades until his silverine sword completely fused with his body. This made him emit silverine from his own flesh. He surpassed human limits and became the strongest dragon hunter ever. He was now on the same level as the dragon monarchs. He could protect everything and everyone, but there is nothing left for him to protect. He feels useless every day. However, Ragna met him days later. Ragna reacted as always. He tried to immediately kill Crimson. However, Crimson seemed to have multiple bodies and be immortal. Crimson then dropped the bomb. He wanted Ragna to join him and help him fulfill his wish, and that wish was the same as Ragna's: to kill every single dragon. Ragna is shocked. He can't believe such words. Crimson then reveals that once they're done, Ragna will have to kill the last dragon alive, Crimson himself. Without a second thought, Ragna took this chance and began a dragon hunt revolution. However, it took too much time. They wanted it to be faster, so they came with the idea sending Ragna back on time and give his younger self his current power. He appears on the night of the attack, right before Leonica dies. Grimwelt is still explaining to her how little the dragons think of humans. And young Ragna is still in the river. Older Ragna shows him all the devastating memories, including the one where Leonica dies. He stabs him with his sword, transferring all his power to him to save Leonica and everyone else. As the power surges through him, young Ragna feels excruciating pain that he screams loudly, scaring the dragon hunters who rescue him. Just as Grimwelt tries to attack Leonica and clap her, Ragna wakes up. He instantly freezes all the inferior dragons with no effort. His demeanor has completely changed. He seems cold now, thanks to the silverine aura he's emitting. This completely scares Grimwelt, stopping him midway his attack. He compares this fearful aura with that of a dragon monarch. When he sees that it's coming from Ragna, he tries to act tough, changing into his dragon form. But Ragna instantly freezes him too and shatters him into pieces. Leonica is standing there, watching this crazy power at play. She's still alive, which makes Ragna happy. He runs to hug her and pass out in her arms. The next day, the city gets attacked again by a forest dragon named Temruoktaf. Ragna is still sleeping, but Leonica immediately goes out there to protect the people. The forest trees seem endless and alive as they keep attacking her. They even make it to Ragna's room and try to attack him as well. When Leonica sees this, she turns back to help him. However, other trees intercept her. But before they can attack her, Ragna wakes up. He immediately freezes the trees there and locates Temruoktaf, who is eating some maids in the forest. He goes to attack without a second thought, which worries Leonica. She follows him behind, but can't keep up as he's too fast now. When he gets to Temruoktaf, he drop-kicks him before he devours a young maid, sending him flying across the forest. But when he turns to the young maid, he realizes that it's Crimson, the previous dragon monarch, in disguise. He thinks Crimson is there to find him, but Crimson doesn't understand what's going on, or who's this crazy kid. But Ragna has the memories of his past self, so he knows that Crimson has always been like this. Leonica soon catches up to him and Temruoktaf charges at them. Leonica gets in position to face him, but Ragna quickly takes care of it. He feeds Temruoktaf a silverine bomb, causing him to explode and destroy the whole forest. Leonica is surprised by Ragna's power. She even jokes that it will be hard for her to catch up to him now. Yet, Ragna simply tells her to leave him and get out of the country. Leo is shocked. She doesn't understand why he would say that. She refuses to understand. She shouts at him. She is the leader. She is the one who orders him. Ragna is shocked. Leo has always been calm, strong, and right, no matter which situation they were in. Why can't she accept this is the best decision? Until reality and guilt hit him. Leo is indeed strong and calm, but she's also a child. She's only a 12-year-old. Just a child who was forced to be strong to protect his weak and pathetic self. But now, it is time to change. He knows that Leo will die if she stays with him, so he has to make a decision. And so, he decides to save her by repeating the same words she used to save him. The weak die. Leo starts to tear down. She doesn't want to be separated from him. She bursts into a rage, thinking she can prove her own strength by attacking him. Yet, the sword of the once strongest dragon hunter is stopped by one of Ragna's fingers. He makes her leave the country with the other dragon hunters and watches her go while crying. After watching Leonica leave the country, Ragna turns to him. Crimson wants to go home, but Ragna keeps insisting that he's the previous dragon monarch. But that doesn't make sense because he's still alive despite being in contact with the sunlight. Ragna easily explains Crimson hasn't died yet because he's no longer the winged monarch. Crimson shrugs this off and walks away. Right then, Ragna suddenly collapses due to a high fever, which forces Crimson to stay because Ragna saved him earlier. Ragna later wakes up and Crimson asks him about the dragons destroying the kingdom. Ragna explains that this is the reason they need to act now. They need to slay the winged monarch who leads them, Ultimacia. Crimson can't believe this. It sounds like a joke. But Ragna isn't joking around. Their future selves managed to do it, so it's possible. This time, however, they will do it even faster because they have already met. Crimson turns around and thinks about how Ragna knows so much about him. He wonders about the future that he keeps mentioning because to him, it hasn't happened yet. He actually finds it entertaining. While Ragna was unconscious, he analyzed his body and found that it's fused with a silver sword. Ragna can generate silverine and his potential is astronomical. Crimson is sly and scheming, so he's secretly excited to test out this newfound method of clapping dragons. He then turns to Ragna, still pretending to be an innocent little girl. Suddenly, they see some inferior dragons as they fly nearby. They are headed toward Leonica's group and Ragna can't have that. He picks Crimson up and runs in the same direction as well, asking Crimson for orders. Crimson tells him to obliterate the dragons, and Ragna does just that by kicking down one of the dragons, causing all of them to stop. He then unleashes his silverine, creating several swords around him and sending them to impale a dragon before it can attack him. The dragon freezes. One of the swords flies towards Crimson, and he catches it. He inspects it and notices that it's nothing special. If anything, it's trash. However, it can still freeze a dragon with just a touch, thanks to Ragna's power. It can also clap superior dragons even in the hands mid-tier dragon hunters. Crimson realizes that Ragna's power is beyond what he imagined. It's too deep. If he could control an army using these swords, he would own these dragons. Right after, he vomits out some slime and orders it to do its job. The slime happily attacks the dragons by engulfing them and dissolving them into bones. Crimson decides to finally reveal his true identity and accepts joining forces with him, but under one condition. Ragna must drink a special poison that will clap him if he tries to betray him. Crimson is kind of scared of Ragna's power, so he needs insurance. Ragna quickly downs the poison without hesitation, surprising Crimson. Then Crimson sits down and addresses Ragna, telling him his plan to wipe out the entire dragon race. He'll then clap the dragon god, and in the end, Ragna will clap him too. The next day, they start moving. Up ahead, they find a group of people trying to take down some inferior dragons. Ragna immediately deals with the dragons, leaving the group astonished. After he's done, Crimson walks over to him, suggesting seeing his silverine battle arts in action. He wants to see the group there using it. The leader of the group, Michael, is comforting some kids, which gives Crimson the gist of it all. He walks over and assures them that they are safe now as Ragna, the Reaper, has taken care of the dragons nearby. He introduces Ragna as a master dragon hunter who has clapped many superior dragons. This isn't true, of course, but they don't need to know that, and lucky for him, they believe this and even refer to Ragna as the Reaper. Michael introduces himself and gets onto his knees to beg the duo for help. He wants them to take down a superior dragon which has attacked their city of Tortiere. They had to run away from there when they were suddenly hit by a massive tornado. It was unleashed by a wind using superior dragon named Desaz-Toi, the third seat of the winged bloodline. Crimson knows the dragon and explains how he uses the wind to hide himself. Ragna becomes motivated to go and confront Desaz-Toi right away, but Crimson stops and slightly pushes him to the ground. He knows Ragna can't move and tells him to rest for 3 days. It's clear that Crimson just paralyzed him in order to prevent him from interfering with his plans. Crimson then tells the group that Ragna can't help them because of his injuries. So, they ask Crimson to help them instead. But he refuses, even when they promise to pay him with everything they have, including their swords. He knows that they are desperate for help because they feel guilty. They ran away from Tortiere and left people behind. Now, they feel guilty, and Crimson is making it worse by recounting everything that happened as they were escaping. Michael can't take it anymore. He falls to his knees and cries that it's all true. But he's too weak to do anything about it. If he had the power Ragna and Crimson have, he would protect everyone. And that's what Crimson wants to hear. He presents him with a sword as the power he needs to clap dragons. Michael accepts the sword with the other dragon hunters behind him in support. Crimson now has people he can control in battle. Mission accomplished. He takes them back to Tordier and through a magic door that leads to a room with a lot of guns on display. It's the coolest thing they have ever seen, but the most impressive thing is the bullets. They are infused with Silverine from Ragna, the Reaper himself. Slime is also useful in scouting Desaz-Trois movements and reporting back to Crimson. He lays out a simulation of the town's current state, which shows the tornado still active with some survivors. Crimson realizes that Desaz-Trois is just killing time because he was ordered to stand by in this city. He then comes up with a plan before the crack of dawn. He riles up the dragon hunters with a motivational speech and they get pumped. They leave and find Desaz-Trois shortly after. Crimson uses a loudspeaker to taunt him and insults to the winged monarch. Desaz-Trois gets annoyed that Crimson insulted Ultimacia. He gets enraged so much that he starts chasing them, and that's exactly what Crimson wants. He keeps driving east as the sun starts to slowly show on the horizon. He increases the speed of the vehicle, but Desaz-Trois is on their tail. They open fire, rapidly weakening Desaz-Trois tornado. Soon, they drive under a bridge, causing the tornado to suddenly stop and break open. Desaz-Trois is thrown out as the sun is rising. Ragna has infused the bridge with his Silverine, which helped the tornado break open. Desaz-Trois is left confused, and before he knows it, Slime, in the form of a giant hand, grabs him and sticks him onto a gigantic silver arrow. Desaz-Trois has never been this confused in his life. Everything happened so fast, and now he's freezing from the arrow that's being held in place by 5 knights. He tries to summon his wind, but he can't. He also can't melt the arrow since his magic is weak now. The knights steadily hold the arrow as the sun has fully risen to help him burn. He cries in pain from the cold of the Silverine and heat of the sun. Suddenly, the ground where the arrow is gets uprooted by some force. It falls down, taking Desaz-Trois and the knights with it. The arrow has broken in half and the head is in Desaz-Trois' chest. He's now free and enraged. He tries to remove the arrowhead from his chest with his back turned to his enemies. And that's a big mistake because Crimson runs him over with the vehicle, breaking him into pieces. He's then set ablaze, burned, and decapitated. Crimson attributes this downfall to Desaz-Trois' pride. Despite being provoking, he didn't go all out because he never thought he would get clapped. Unfortunately, his negligence was just as dangerous as Silverine and Sunlight. After the battle, Crimson gives the dragon hunters and survivors food, vehicles, and weapons to leave the city. As they are about to leave, he casts a spell to make them forget about him. He then turns around and disappears. Michael thanks Ragna for his help, and Ragna commends him and the others for bringing down the dragon, making them happy. They shake hands and the dragon hunters group leaves. After, Crimson pulls out a radio from his witch's hat and listens to the announcement being broadcasted. It says that there's a dragon attack at the border, and all citizens must evacuate to the capital where it's safe. No one should go near the border no matter what. Ragna thinks this is a trap. They are trying to prevent people from escaping the country by gathering them at the capital. So, they head to the capital and manage to sneak into the old district, a place closer to the palace. Crimson disguises himself as a woman named Veronica and leaves Slime in charge of a sick Ragna who can't stand large crowds. He promises to be back in 2 hours and asks Ragna to stay out of trouble. He then walks away, mixing with the crowd and thinking about the population in city. Despite the refugee influx, the number of people on the streets is low. Their only feasible explanation is that they're reducing the numbers without anyone noticing. He finds one of his servants, Golem, and get the latest intel. His other servant, Chimera, arrives as well. Crimson briefs them with his plan to make Ragna face Ultimacia. He needs them to work together to make this work. Meanwhile, outside, Ragna and Slime find a crowd gathered around a raised tarp. There are military officers there who take down the tarp and reveal frozen dragons. The dragons then burn, signifying the capital's safety and their efforts to swat off danger. This hypes the crowd up, but Ragna knows it's just a trick, and he knows exactly who's making them do it. He starts walking away when he suddenly passes by Ultimacia disguised as a regular citizen. Ultimacia also notices him and turns to ask if he's okay. He immediately becomes alert and anxious for spotting his enemy. He feels the urge to slice her up right then, but Crimson ordered him not to do it even though he'd win one-on-one. He wants to wait for Crimson and the others, and he knows Ultimacia has her superior dragons, Nebulum and Bogius, on watch, so he decides to walk away. Just as he does, Nebulum shows up to check on Ultimacia. He immediately becomes suspicious of Ragna because he looks like a dragon hunter. Ultimacia tells him that Ragna is just sick because of the crowd, which is something he can relate to. When he becomes sick too and vomits, Ragna uses this chance to disappear from there. Crimson and his servants, on the other hand, analyze a footage of Ultimacia. She's in the palace with the king and time seems to have stopped. Because of this, she's not visible in the footage until the king is attacked and she heals him. Crimson explains that Ultimacia suddenly appears at that point because she can't stop time and rewind it at once. She either has to stop it or rewind it, which is a weakness. If they ambush and clap her, she'd rewind time on herself to heal. And because she wouldn't be able to stop time while doing that, they'd just clap her again, making her rewind time again. This would repeat until she has exhausted all her magic, meaning she would expire and die. The problem is that Nebulum and Borgias would interfere. That's where Chimera and Golem come in. They must ensure that Ragna finishes the job with no interference. Meanwhile, Ragna is walking in an alley, wondering if he made the right decision by not fighting Ultimacia. He has a hallucination of Crimson telling him that he did the right thing. But still, he feels like he must put an end to Ultimacia right away. He asks Slime to contact and inform Crimson that he has found his target before leaving. Slime calls Crimson and reports that Ragna has betrayed them. Ragna goes back to where Ultimacia is. She's helping a kid reunite with his parents and casually asks Nebulum if the family is on the list to disappear. Ragna overhears this, and Nebulum explains that his method makes them disappear without a trace or suffering. Ultimacia becomes happy to hear this, calling it true salvation. All of this sickens Ragna, and he goes over to them to swiftly paralyzes Nebulum with his sword. Ultimacia doesn't catch on right away. She only notices when Nebulum crumbles to pieces. That's when she realizes that Ragna is an enemy. She removes her disguise and tries to stop time, but Ragna rushes her and slices her up, clapping her immediately. She rewinds time on herself, but he quickly punches her to bits right away, clapping her again. They repeat this again while Crimson and the others hear the commotion outside. When Ultimacia rewinds time again, she tries to counterattack, but Ragna punches her into the air a couple of times. She uses a blood flame magic to attack him, but he counters with his silverine swords which impale her. Crimson is annoyed that Ragna started the fight without his permission, but he's curious to see how far he can push Ultimacia. Ragna keeps attacking her over and over that she loses count on how many times she's died. She starts fearing that she's running out of time. Borgias tries to help her, but Golem attacks him before he can do anything. Ragna continues to attack, but suddenly gets enclosed in a magic barrier by Nebulum. Nebulum managed to wake up, but he's in a terrible state. Ultimacia rewinds time again and attacks Ragna using a blood dragon's barrier. However, Ragna uses Silverine full power to break Nebulum's barrier. Nebulum tries to strengthen the barrier, but Slime shows up next to him and swallows him, allowing Ragna to break free. Ultimacia has fully healed herself and calms down a bit, but Ragna breaks out of the blood barrier as well. He immediately attacks her before she can stop time, but she quickly rewinds it while thinking about her first seat dragon, Waltikemui. Meanwhile, Ragna keeps attacking until they are outside the capital. He doesn't hold back and unleashes all his rage on her. He punches her repeatedly until the ground breaks and causes an explosion. She decides to use a trick Waltikemui told her to use in desperate situations. She rewinds the whole world. This takes all of them back to when Ragna and Slime found a crowd around a tarp covering frozen dragons. Ragna becomes confused and can feel that something is wrong. Ultimacia shows up behind him and stops time. She starts talking about how much magic it takes to rewind the whole world, which is why she doesn't do it much. But she had to do it because Ragna is a threat to her. She then wonders why he hates her so much to clap her multiple times. It's scary, so it's better if she just claps him now. She moves the people around to somewhere safe. This leaves her with just Ragna and Slime. Before she can move Slime, she notices Ragna's finger moving, which startles her. No one can move without permission when she has stopped time. Nebulum arrives and attacks Ragna in vengeance. She sees that Ragna hasn't moved again and is getting beat up by Nebulum. So, she becomes relieved. She stops Nebulum because there's slime on his hands, which is dissolving some of his skin. Plus, beating Ragna up won't do anything because he broke through all her defenses during the battle. She has realized that his body is like a silver sword, which magic doesn't work on. They must come up with another method to defeat him. She asks Borgias to tell the king to use a powerful light beam to strike Ragna. But then, Ragna remembers when she injected his future self with her blood. This enraged him so much that he wakes up. He runs towards her, but slower than before. She starts panicking and sets him on fire with her blood. She becomes terrified that her time control magic isn't working properly. All those with her blood can move, she just chooses who shouldn't. Ragna once had her blood in the future too, so he can also move because he wasn't exempted from it. Of course, she doesn't know this because it's a different timeline. As Ragna keeps running towards her, Nebulum uses a barrier to protect her. But Ragna smashes through it and reaches her, scaring her out of her wits. He then cuts her up in pieces. She rewinds time on herself, causing time to resume as normal. He charges at her again, and Nebulum shields her with his body, bracing for the attack. But he suddenly stops and starts bleeding from his face. This is a result of overexerting himself and his powers too much. He falls to the ground and bleeds even more. Right then, the king shoots the beam at Ragna after Nebulum leaves the area with ultimatum. After the explosion, Nebulum sees Chimera and Crimson, who's disguised as woman, right by Ragna's body, but he doesn't know who they are. Crimson is disappointed with Ragna because he lost. He should have listened to orders, but he didn't, and now he's like this, which is annoying. Despite that, he starts describing how Ultimacia has never been combat-oriented. So, she never liked to fight. But she was always confident in her time control magic. Right now, though, she's traumatized and shaking because Ragna has shattered that confidence. He wonders if she'll use her magic one more time to take care of Ragna once and for all. She's still panicking, thinking that there's something wrong with her magic, but she finally decides to use it and try to stop time again. Crimson wanted this. He detonates multiple bombs Golem has placed around the area and injure many people, which distracts Ultimacia. He's doing this to break her even more. And it works. She panics, not understanding what is happening. If she wants to save everyone, she will have to rewind the world. So, she tries to do that, but Nebulum stops her because it will exhaust all her magic. Crimson gets annoyed with this and leaves with Ragna on Chimera's back. They go back to his globe chamber, a teleportation room connected to different points on Earth and the Moon. He wants to leave the country and recuperate, but Ragna wakes up and refuses to leave. He insists that he won't leave without clapping Ultimacia. Crimson tries to calm him down and commend him for doing a good job. Now he needs to rest, but he refuses this. He forces himself up and activates his Silverine battle arts. Crimson orders Chimera to restrain him. He then steps on his head, complaining about the technique. It might damage his teleportation room, but it's too late for that. There's already a crack on the wall, and Nebulum sees it from outside, pinpointing their location. Crimson can't believe it. He tries to open the door, but it doesn't open. Nebulum becomes determined to destroy the room and drag them out of there, which angers Crimson. He orders Golem to clap them, and Golem shoots at Nebulum. Nebulum asks Borgias for help and Borgias fires at Golem. Ragna continues to resist Chimera's restraints. He breaks free and becomes determined to destroy all the dragons outside. Crimson is shocked and mad at Ragna for helping their enemy ruin his plan. But Ragna doesn't care, he just powers up more. Fortunately, they manage to escape the teleportation room through an emergency exit and end up at Lisa's military base. Crimson gets taken to the commander of the Royal Army's Special Corps and second princess of the kingdom, Starlia Lise. He knows everything about her, and he hates her. She was born with no arms, but her eyes can see the aura emitted by all things, and that aura allows her to move anything using only her mind. The first thing she controlled was a silverware set and got nicknamed the Silverware Princess. The Solarians think she's a miracle and half the world know her. At 3 years, she clapped 3 inferior dragons. At 6 years, she won a combat tournament. At 8 years, she clapped a horde of dragons. And at 9 years, she prevented a coup d'etat. After 10 years, she became a master silversmith, crafting incredible silver equipment. Now she's 16 and is a commander of a core unit with amazing combatants who use her equipment. The reason Crimson hates her is because she can spot lies right away. And he lies for a living. She starts questioning him while pointing her weapons at him. She wants to know who he is and how he got there. He decides to think carefully before replying. He knows she and her unit want to teleport out of the country because 2 superior dragons are after them. This means their goals are the same. So, they should cooperate and escape together. He wants to try and trick. She can see aura changing based on emotions and determine people's sincerity. If he acts sincere by mixing some truth into his lies, he should be able to trick her. He decides to reveal his left eye, shocking everyone. He introduces himself as Krish Weiss, a magician. Great magicians are sometimes born with non-human features, and since the unit has a magician, the dragon eye should convince them. He doesn't want to hide this because Starlia could clap him if her instinct told her he's guilty. She gives him a huge sword, leaving him surprised. She gives weapons to the people she likes, and she likes him because he's a liar. Crimson holds the sword, but she harshly takes it back right then. This was a trick to get him to touch the silver, which she uses to see a person's true nature. A person's true nature is the sum of their lived life, and Crimson's is a dark cluster of death. She orders everyone to draw their swords and accuses Crimson of being the one behind the explosions at the Capitol. Crimson tries to explain, but she doesn't give him the chance. He turns to the unit's magician, Fu, and begs him for help. But Fu refuses because he listens to his commander no matter what. Starlia throws her sword at Crimson, making him scream in fear. In reality, though, he doesn't care if she claps him, he won't die anyways. He'll just use this chance to hide in the base and escape with Ragna after. Suddenly, Ragna appears and intercepts the sword, saying he's the only one allowed to clap Crimson. Starlia is stunned out of her mind to see him. Ragna suspects Crimson of doing something, but he's the victim this time. While the others wonder how he got in there, Starlia falls to the floor in a squeal, confusing her unit. Her tutor, Nazarena, helps her up as she points at Ragna and calls him a sword with arms. Ragna is confused and worries that Crimson really did something. Crimson wonders how Starlia is seeing Ragna since she sees the world differently. She sees him as a sword with a body and starts freaking out and falling down again. This makes her unit furious, thinking Ragna did something. They try attacking him, but he easily stops them with a few punches. Starlia stares at him, thinking about how he's the perfect fusion of a human and Silverine. He's beautiful, sculptured to perfection, with scars and Silverine aura to top it off. He's so powerful, but so calm and so hot. She starts acting shy and asking Nazarena what to do. Ragna and Crimson are shocked. They didn't expect this at all. Ragna tries to talk to her, but she hides behind Nazarena in embarrassment. He awkwardly tells her that he and Crimson aren't there to fight. If Crimson is spared, they will obey their orders. They get locked in a cell as the unit decides what to do with them. In there, Crimson forces Ragna down and steps on his head for ruining his plan. Ragna doesn't want to leave Ultimatia alive any longer.
How do you plan on compensating for those losses? I also don't know what happened to Golem. Creations and Chimera's whereabouts are unknown.
Now both Golem and Chimera are missing. He must compensate for all of this. Ragna says that he will compensate by clapping Ultimatia, which annoys Crimson. Ragna wants to return to the capital once he recovers, which frustrates Crimson even more. Ragna then asks about Slime, who Crimson forgot about. Crimson finds a drop of slime on Ragna's neck and uses it along with his hair to bring Slime back to life. Except Slime is smaller now, making Crimson blame Ragna for another loss. After Ragna apologizes, Slime asks about where they are, which Ragna also doesn't know. Crimson tells them that it's an underground military training base in northern Lys. The people there are in danger because of the superior dragons targeting them. This changes Ragna's mind about returning to the capital. The soldiers have a meeting with Starlia, giving her a report on the current situation. The dragons are acting strange. There hasn't been any activity, and it doesn't seem like they are going to attack even if they get a signal. It feels like they are preoccupied. Starlia thinks carefully about it and concludes that the dragons have left, but aren't intending to let them go. This could still be a good opportunity for them to prepare. Crimson and Ragna arrive, making Starlia blush and cover her eyes. Crimson offers to help them with an escape plan. He knows that they want to use dragon blood as a source of magic to teleport out of there. It's a solid plan, but it won't work. The enemy's military power is too great to compare. But if they work together, he can provide them with intel on the enemy. He can also provide a super weapon capable of clapping superior dragons alone. The super weapon is, of course, Ragna the Reaper. Starlia blushes when she hears Ragna's name, but gets herself together and refuses to cooperate. Crimson focuses on one of the superior dragons who are targeting them, Ulto Zora. Ulto Zora manages and leads military affairs. His power is chemical synthesis. He creates poisons to eliminate or hypnotize his targets with his own blood. He can spread the poisons like a mist, covering a large area. Luckily, the poisons can be neutralized by sunlight and Silverine. This information can help them fight against him, even though his army's power will be multiplied due to the poisons and hypnosis. Starlia and her unit are suspicious of this information, but Crimson reminds them that if he was lying, Starlia would know. He also makes Ragna convince her because she likes him. Ragna is not sure he can do it, but he tries because he wants to help the people there. Back in the cell, Crimson told him that he calculated that at least 10,000 dragons and the 13th seat, led by Ulto Zora and Terictra, will attack them. The base has only 1850 people in personnel and civilians, which means everyone will die. Crimson asked him to forget about Ultimatia for now so they can escape the country. He will use everything he has, including Ragna himself, to make sure everyone escapes. Ragna manages to convince Starlia that despite how terrible Crimson is, there's nothing he wants more than to kill all dragons. That's why he teamed up with him. and as the world's best dragon hunter, he wants Starlia to use him because he can help her. Starlia is beyond happy that her first love is asking her to use him, but she remains professional and agrees to work together. Crimson is satisfied with this and wants to modify the plan based on his intel. Starlia doesn't care for him, she just wants him to simply provide information, and she will do everything else. Crimson sarcastically agrees and warns her not to mess up. He then briefs her that the dragons suddenly stopped activity because he and Ragna fought Ultimacia in the capital. This is probably why they rushed there. Back there, Waltakamui shows Ultimacia Michael's head as the one who clapped Desaz-Toi. He found and clapped Michael, who told him that the Reaper would come for him before dying. At the base, Ragna's power is tested. He infuses a sword with Silverine, and Ike tests it out by cutting one of Starlia's swords. It successfully slices halfway through the sword, leaving everyone impressed. Ragna explains that the effect won't last long because the swords deteriorate over time. But because Starlia's swords are high quality, there's nothing to worry about. Starlia then decides to have all the weapons infused with Ragna's Silverine. In the base's teleportation room, Fu and his team are having a hard time with the magic circles and the amount of magic they need. They need more than 15 inferior dragons' blood to transport just one person. Even if they kill all the dragons which will attack them, the blood will still not be enough for all 1850 people. They need to do more experiments, but there's no time. Crimson appears and offers to lend a hand. Fu doesn't trust him, but he won't refuse. Meanwhile, Starlia talks to Ragna in private. She gives him 3 swords from her disposal because there's no time to make him a special one. She then tells him that after the battle, she wants to join the Solarians and become a dragon scourge. She knows she won't be able to take care of over 1,000 people once they escape the country. If she joins the Solarians, they will help protect her people. But she might die in the battle. And when that happens, she wants Ragna to join the Solarians in her place and help her people. She begs him. Unfortunately, Ragna refuses because he doesn't like the religion. She shouldn't act like her death is predetermined. But she explains that her intuition has been telling her that she's fated to die ever since the war started. She then becomes assertive and points out that Ragna asked her to use him. That makes him her subordinate, and as her subordinate, he must obey her orders. This leaves Ragna is impressed. He never thinks about dying during battles, and when he does, he thinks it's okay if it happens. Starlia, on the other hand, is fully prepared for the worst, making her more capable than him. Her willpower is so incredible that it shines, reminding him of Leonica. These are the people he has always wanted to survive. He decides to transfer his power into the 3 swords and tells Starlia to become the Dragon Scourge because he'll protect her. The sun starts to set, and the unit waits for the enemy to arrive. After it has set, Ultozora appears and starts attacking the base with tentacle-like roots coming from the ground. He has broken the barriers Starlia set in the ground, but the base will be able to withstand it. However, right then, Terractra arrives through the sky and immediately plummets towards the base. When Starlia sees this, she remembers a tip from Crimson to counter this attack. The impact causes minimal damage and Terractra gets thrown back a distance, shocking Ultozora. Terractra tells him that he was countered as he was about to collide with base, intensifying the shock. Ragna was the one who counterattacked. He stands at a distance from where Terractra has fallen. He's holding 2 swords overflowing with Silverine that they glow. Ultozora thinks he could the Reaper, but Terractra tells him that the Silverine isn't coming from his body, only from his swords. So, they don't start freaking out and calling Waltakamui. Terractra then focuses on Ragna, who refuses to give him his name because he hates talking to dragons. Terractra suggests they talk through their strength instead. Meanwhile, Crimson goes to brief the citizens about the superior dragons and how they reach maturity. The talented ones reach maturity faster, and Terractra took 10 years, which means he doesn't have much talent. Even he knows this, but he compensates with the power he obtained while he was still human. He's even giving Ragna a hard time and blasting him with blood fire. No matter how much Ragna cuts him, he remains intact. Ragna lets go of one of the swords and takes off one of his gloves to infuse his hand with the sword. The sword starts releasing an immense amount of power. Terractra prepares to use all his strength as well and see who will win between him and Ragna. Ragna uses the Dragon Slayer strike, while Terractra uses the seismic cannon. The 2 attacks intensely collide, causing a huge explosion of fire and silver. It goes quiet for a bit and Ultozora starts to worry about Terractra, but becomes relieved when he hears his voice. Having won against Ragna, Ragna is just lying there unconscious. Slime, who is on his head, tries to wake him up, but doesn't succeed. Ultozora still worries that Ragna could be the Reaper, but Terractra is sure that if he was, they would know. So, they can just finish him off right now. Terractra goes over to crush Ragna with his foot as slime continues to wake him up. Ragna wakes up and dodges in time, surprising Terractra and Ultozora. He survived by transferring his consciousness from his body to his sword. Otherwise, he would have died. Terractra summons some inferior dragons to deal with Ragna because he's no longer a threat to him. Ragna defends himself in frustration that Terractra is looking down on him. He's beat up and exhausted to the point of coughing up blood, but still wants to fight Terractra, who's leaving. Ragna tries to stop him because they are supposed to be talking through their strengths. Terractra knows that they have talked enough for him to understand that Ragna is stronger. He would have won if his sword could withstand his power. After, Ultozora instructs Terractra to go to Starlia's location and blasts her with his cannon. Ragna doesn't give up on trying to stop him, but the inferior dragons are endless. He's too exhausted, injured, and on his knee. However, they don't stop coming. Luckily, Shin arrives, saves him, and scolds him for getting defeated by inferior dragons. Garm also arrives, making Ragna ask why they are there and not defending the base. More dragons attack them, and the trio handle them quickly, while Garm explains that most of the base's entrances have been blocked off. Ike's squad is guarding the one that's still open, while Starlia is fighting alongside 200 soldiers. Shin and Garm came there to help Ragna, but Ragna is sure that he doesn't need them. This angers Shin so much, especially when Ragna insists that he can handle himself because he never dies. He suddenly slips from the back of a dragon and falls. Shin uses a powerful move and eliminates several dragons in order to clear the way to Ragna. He yells at him that they all have a duty to clap as many dragons as possible to escape. That's why Ragna wants to be the one to do it. Shin and the others can go hide in the base and let him cook. This angers Shin even more. He challenges him to a duel. He has lost all the other duels they had, but now he's determined to show him that he's not a coward. Ragna is confused by the sudden duel during a battle, but Shin doesn't give him the chance to protest. He charges him head-on, forcing him to defend. Ragna is unprepared and underperforms, so Shin wins, almost slicing his head off. He grabs him by the hair and tells him that this battle is theirs to fight. No matter his reasons or how strong he is, they won't let him come from wherever and act like a hero. Ragna is left shocked as Shin walks over to Garm. Right then, Slime, who has transferred from Ragna to Shin's head, tells Shin that he knows where Terractra has escaped to. The three of them start walking to find and give him hell. While that's happening, Starlia erects a cage using her barrier arts. She was lured out into the dark forest by Ultozora to gain advantage over her, but she's confident that she can simply turn the forest into her territory. She thinks she can pull it off because the magic circle is almost ready. All they have to do is continue clapping dragons and surviving until they can teleport. Unfortunately, Ultozora has figured out their plan. He knows they're trying to teleport using dragon's magic. Starlia scans the dark forest. Since she sees everything with their auras, she sees the dragons as black masses which stand out from everything else. The forest, however, is completely dark, so she can't see what the dragons are doing in there. But she can see a horde of zombies that Ultozora has created coming in. The zombies are innocent people who will delay their plan. Ultozora figured that their magic circle is configured to teleport everyone in its effect area at once. So, he's doubling their numbers to make them work 2 times harder to collect dragon magic. Starlia becomes frustrated and orders her squad to look out for any abnormalities in the forest and attack. But before she can finish talking, they get ambushed from above, yet she manages to block it with a barrier. Many experienced low and mid dragons start using specific attacks from their superior creators. This means these dragons are as strong as the superior dragons, and there's 40 of them. Starlia tries to take control of the situation and direct her squad on how to fight, but it all proves to be challenging. While that happens, Ultozora witnesses as the dragon's magic gets absorbed by the teleportation team. The absorption circle seems to be 2 kilometers wide, which is suspiciously big for a developing country like Lee's to achieve. He wonders who else could be involved and remembers that Nebulum saw a woman next to Ragna's body the other day. She used a much more powerful barrier magic than him, and maybe she's involved. However, Ultozora is confident that they can win, but he worries that there are things which might bring the possibility of a loss. All of that doesn't matter, though, as long as they capture Starlia. Maybe there's a possibility that she might lose hope and teleport on her own. To prevent this, he needs to take control of the magic circle in the base. Meanwhile, Ike is having a hard time defending the base. His soldiers on the front line suddenly got eliminated, and he didn't see how it happened. He's confused, but he knows that the dragon they are facing is responsible. It suddenly arrived and the barrier was disabled, leaving a bunch of the soldiers dead. It then starts approaching, prompting him to order his squad to retreat while the firing squad covers them. It's a mature dragon that can use magic. Crimson once said that since Ultimacia can control time, there might be mature dragons with the same ability as well. Ike prepares to fight as the firing squad opens fire at the dragon. But it stops time and releases powerful energy bursts which clap more soldiers and knock Ike down. He doesn't know what to do because he can't block an attack outside of his reality. However, he becomes motivated and picks up his swords and runs towards the dragon. Maybe it has a weakness, like a limit on stopping time, or a cool-off time. Whatever it is, he needs to act now while time is normal. The dragon hits him with another burst of energies, but he defends against them and grazes it on the shoulder. It jumps back and tries to stop time again. But Crimson arrives, making it confuse him with Ultimacia. Crimson throws a ball at it, confusing it even more. It isn't sure if it should catch the ball. So, it stops times which activates the ball, causing it to explode like a flashbang and emit a lot of sunlight. It starts burning and screaming in pain until it has turned into ashes. After that, time resumes like normal. Ike and the others are confused as they deal with the effects of the blinding sunlight. Crimson lets them know that he clapped the dragon and explains how his flashbang ball works. It stores sunlight which would normally flash for a split second, but because it only activates when time gets stopped, making the flash last longer. The dragon gets confused from the pain, preventing it from doing anything else but burn. Someone suddenly speaks and Ike doesn't recognize the voice. He demands to know who it is, and Crimson reveals that it's one of the 1,500 citizens who he has recruited. They were desperate to fight too, so he gave them weapons and hypnotized them. Ike tries to protest this, so Crimson hypnotizes him and his squad too. He found out that Ulto Zora figured out their plan and is sabotaging it. He needed to come up with a quick backup plan. So, he will make the hypnotized civilians fight the zombies and reduce the number of people in the effect area. Suddenly, they feel as the 13th seat of the winged bloodline tries to knock down a wall to the teleportation room. He gets hit by barriers everywhere which frustrates and makes him scream. His scream annoys Fu, who's nearby, trying to sleep. The 13th seat asks to be taken to the magic circle in return of a peaceful death to Fu. But Fu is not in the mood for this, he just wants to clap the dragon. Earlier before the battle, he had told Australia that the median and mature dragon's blood has 100 times more magic for the teleportation. The 13th seat will be a great addition to this. He unleashes his non-human arm's power, defeats the dragon, and absorbs all its magic. He feels satisfied with his work, but his team suddenly starts beating him up, claiming he has lost control to his non-human arm. Crimson witnesses all of this and is impressed with Fu's power. Now he's interested in this unit, and he wants to take control of them with minimal damage. Right then, some of Ulto Zora's roots break into the area, but the hypnotized civilians quickly take care of them. Crimson then tells all of them to hurry and leave. Back in the forest, the battle continues. Starlia and her squad are overwhelmed. Wind-using dragons are toying with their air force and knocking them to their feet. Starlia launches some of the soldiers into the air to break some of the dragon's barrier and attack them. One of the dragons launches itself into Starlia's cage and wounds her when she least expects it. Ulto Zora expected her to fail anyways because she was at a disadvantage due to her lack of experience in large-scale battles. She was commanding the defense and offense without realizing how exhausting it is. He then starts thinking the party is over, but Terictra warns him about Ragna, Shin and Garm who are on his tail. He has already lost a third of his army, but he still believes they will eventually win if they increase their numbers. Ragna and the others can't seem to be getting any closer to Terictra because the inferior dragons keep increasing. They are exhausted with no time to catch their breath. And Ragna looks like he's dying, but is still on his feet, running forward and slicing up the dragons. He's not stopping for anything, which motivates Shin to keep up too. On the inside, he's in extreme pain, he can't even breathe, he's cold, and he just wants to stop. But he knows he can't because he wants to protect everyone all by himself. What Shin said to him about playing the hero really got to him, but it also made him somewhat relieved. However, that's weakness. Suddenly, the trio come to a stop in front of a horde of dragons. Ragna immediately charges forward and takes them down, impressing Shin and Garm. Even though he looks dead, his techniques are insanely sharp. Ulto Zora realizes that he miscalculated. Ragna is crazy persistence, but he starts feeling strange. It's as if defeat is near, and he's too desperate. Just like his future self was. But that's fine because he has already learned so much about the flow of aura, Silverine and Dragons' magical power. Silverine was created to resist magic. So, it will cut through and freeze all magical power no matter what. As more dragons approach, he uses the seconds before they reach him to refine his Silverine's freezing ability. He's now more powerful from both his power and the experience of his future self. All he needs to do is use his imagination and let the Silverine flow from the tip of his sword as he swings it once. The Silverine flows out and eliminates all the dragons at once without the sword even touching them. Meanwhile, Terratectra gets annoyed with Ragna's persistent. He worries that it will motivate the others around too. But Ultozora thinks it doesn't matter because Starlia is almost done for. She's on the ground wounded and unable to move. Some dragons try to attack her, but one of the soldiers, Christopher, comes to her rescue. She tells him to head northwest, so he picks her up and gets on it. Before this, Starlia had asked Crimson for help to locate Ultozora. Crimson thought it was dangerous, but he still estimated that Ultozora was within 1 kilometer of the base. With this information, Starlia was able to deduce that Terratectra dragged Ragna away from Ultozora's location. Crimson also told her that Ultozora can grow eyes around him to see about 2 kilometers away. So, he must be located at an area which gives him the widest view of the base. Starlia sharpens her senses in that direction to narrow down the area and finds Ultozora. Ultozora realizes that he's been located and releases a poisonous gas to stop Starlia. Nazarena appears behind him and launches a surprise attack, ripping his head and heart off his body. Unfortunately, Ultozora's body is still standing. She realizes that it's a fake and decides to go, leaving the rest to Starlia. Starlia thanks her for helping her find that the real Ultozora is actually 100 meters underground. She starts manipulating the ground to pull him out, using all her strength. She commands Chris to throw a sword at him. Ultozora starts to panic and asks Terratectra to bombard the forest with his cannons. Right then, Ragna and the others see Terratectra, and he also sees them. He aims his cannons at them and starts blasting. After, he checks in with Ultozora, who surveys the area. He finds Starlia, having been hit and lying on the ground. He manifests a body in front of her and praises her and her unit's efforts. Earlier, Crimson was talking about Princess Lacutia, a well-known heroic woman who achieved many military feats and made the Solarians deem her a miracle. She later became a dragon scourge. Many people think Starlia is her reincarnation. Ultozora worked for her as a human, and even kept her memories after becoming a dragon. Because of this, Crimson encouraged Starlia to keep fighting because she will remind Ultozora of Lacutia and drive him crazy. Ultozora asks Starlia to join the winged bloodline because he doesn't want her to die. He even suggests that her soldiers want this for her. She wakes up and realizes that Ultozora is starting to liken her to Lacutia. She reveals to him that she can control Silverine. Since it's made to resist magic, she controls that resistance at will. She may not be a match for him as a general, but she bests him when it comes to the will of resistance in the magic realm. She conjures multiple barriers and summons a large spear which pierces Ultozora, pinning him to a tree. Ultozora freezes, but still grows a mouth on his forehead to keep talking. He doesn't want to waste time and poisons Starlia quickly, but 2 soldiers appear and take her away. They would rather she dies than let him have her. Christopher arrives too and pulls the spear out of Ultozora, causing him to shatter in pieces. Starlia telepathically communicates with her unit to motivate them to keep fighting. They should muster their will to fight, and she will access it to channel it into the spear. She successfully concentrates all her soldiers' will into the spear and orders Christopher to launch it at Terratectra. Ultozora warns Terratectra of the oncoming danger, and he quickly counters with a cannon. The 2 attacks collide, creating a massive explosion of fire and silver. However, the spear cuts through the cannon as the soldiers' willpower increases. Ultozora emerges from the ground as a monster and tries attacking Starlia, who gets saved by Nazarena. Right then, the spear pierces through Terratectra and Ragna catches it. He fuses it with his hand to blast a large amount of Silverine at Terratectra. Terratectra prepares to use the cannon, but it's too late. After, Ragna falls onto slime and worries that Terratectra exploded himself right when he was about to be engulfed by the Silverine. So, he asks Slime to take him to Terratectra again to finish the job. Ultozora, on the other hand, panics and starts calling out to Terratectra, scared that he might have died. Terratectra replies that he's about to die, but he wants to take out the enemy in the process. So, Ultozora sadly orders him to explode again and make his death count. They bid their byes and Ultozora moves away from the area. Terratectra concentrates all his power into his final move, causing a massive explosion. Luckily, Ragna arrives in time to intercept the explosion and blocks it with an enormous amount of Silverine. In the distance, the soldiers notice Terratectra's explosion, and Starlia tells them that Ragna is containing it. If he fails, they are all dead. Ragna continues to expel his Silverine, but the explosion pushes him back. He wants to increase his power, but his sword will break into pieces. Starlia can see this and realizes that the problem is her sword. She feels so defeated, but she doesn't want to give up so easily. So, she leaves her body and consciously goes to support Ragna. She places her hand on his to strengthen the sword and make it last a little bit longer. She asks Ragna to use every ounce of his strength. Ragna feels her support from her hand, making him feel the warmth of her team's determination as well. Together, they concentrate their powers, increasing the surface area of the Silverine and freezing much of the explosion. Unluckily, the explosion engulfs the Silverine and burns even more, directed at just the two of them. Ragna reveals that he has an ace up his sleeve. He and Starlia both let go of the sword as Ragna reveals that he has a sword inside him. He wants Starlia to help him unleash his power. Somehow, she ends up seeing the memories of his lonely future self and becomes emotional. Ragna uses his Silverine battle arts while she uses her Silverine shaping ability to help fully unleash his power. Ragna reflects on how he must hunt all dragons on his own, or else he'll be weak and dependent on others. But now, he feels a fire burning in his heart, signifying a new hope. He concentrates all his power on his fist and punches the sword, releasing all of the power onto the explosion and beyond. Ultozora is at a distance witnessing all this and is stunned to even speak. The explosion has completely frozen over and Ragna stands before it with an impressed Starlia and Slime behind him. Starlia remembers future Ragna and cries. She's actually angry that he's this powerful and beautiful, but ends up alone in the future. It's unacceptable for her, which makes her cry even more. Ragna is moved by this and thanks her for meeting his future self. She also thanks him for helping her and her unit achieve this victory. Plus, she thinks his last strike was super cool. After, she asks him to ditch Crimson and be with her. She won't let him have such a miserable future. He can think about it, though she won't take no for an answer. She then leaves and goes back to her body, ready to meet him after the teleportation. Ragna is left standing there amazed at her magnificence. He thanks her again for surviving with him as they ended up saving each other, before he collapses. Starlia wakes up in her body, and after, the teleportation magic activates. They are all happy and relieved that it all worked out. But that gets cut short when Starlia suddenly loses her head due to Waltakamui's attack. He then puts it back in place and goes to attack Ragna, forcing him to fight. He takes out Slime in the process before Slime can even do anything. Ragna has reached his limit. What's left is his true value. He needs to squeeze it out to continue fighting because he's reached the final boss. Back at the capital, Nebulum starts worrying because Waltakamui has left. Ultimacia lets him know that he has gone to join the fight. There's nothing to worry about because he won't lose to a weak enemy like Ragna. Waltakamui and Ragna start their battle. Earlier before, Crimson told Ragna about the Clawed Monarch who doesn't share her blood with her followers. She gives them clawed weapons, and Waltakamui has stolen one of these claws. Because of this, Ragna must not fight Waltakamui, but he has forgotten that, so he keeps fighting. Waltakamui is too fast. He attacks several times, leaving no opening. However, Ragna holds his own and withstands the attacks, headbutting Waltakamui and severing his head. Waltakamui instantly regenerates and retaliates by tossing him to the ground. He also hits him with an electric shock, which drives him into the ground at an incredible speed. Ragna gets up and uses his sword to return a blow. But Waltakamui breaks the sword and kicks him to the ground again. Before he can get up, Waltakamui attacks once more. Luckily, Ragna blocks in time and counters with a piece of the sword and a ball of Silverine energy, cutting his hand. Waltakamui falls back and Ragna concentrates Silverine in his hand to cut him with it when he comes closer. He pulls out another sword and throws it at Waltakamui, but it breaks on impact when Waltakamui brings out the claw. After, Ragna falls to the ground, unable to move, even when he tries. He hears Starlia's voice and wakes up in an abandoned place. When he sees Starlia, he rushes to her and holds her by the shoulders, shouting her name over and over. He can't believe she's still alive, and she can't believe he's so close to her. She gets him away but asks him to call her by her nickname, Leah. Ragna obliges, making her weak with butterflies. After, he expresses surprise that the teleportation worked and asks about the others. She leads him to them, but suddenly stops, saying that's as far as she goes. She has to attend to other things like forging a sword she's always wanted to forge. It's still unclear how it'll be like because the details are hazy. All she knows is that it's the Silver Comet sword. A silver comet passes in the sky, as she explains how it also passed a long time ago and became the origin of all silver. She wants to create a sword worthy of Ragna. Suddenly, the ground underneath him crumbles and he falls through while she wishes to see him again. He screams for her and wakes up, revealing it was all a dream. He can still feel her, so he's relieved. He looks around and sees that he's bandaged up, with some soldiers sleeping in a tent. He goes outside and finds that he's in a camp in the same abandoned place from his dream. Slime is there too, trying to get the gloomy soldiers to stop being depressed over their loss. Ragna walks up to them, making Slime happy to see him. Ike appears and takes him to see the Solarian Carullas. They are the ones who tried to heal him, even though it was hard because of his Silverine's reaction to magic. Ragna is shocked to see the Carullas look like Ultimatia. His reaction is to immediately kill one of them right away. But Ike reveals they work for the Solarian Church. The Carullas still need to explain why they all look like Ultimatia. The strongest dragon hunters belong to a group called Dragon Scourge, an elite hunter group created by the Solarian Church, who worship the sun god with each member having the title of saint. One of those saints was Carula. She had the power to control and manipulate time. Her skill was so unique to the point where the church decided to create an army of her clones after she passed away. Carula's clones were used as healers, and they even revived soldiers who fought against dragons. Yet, the clones weren't perfect. Each clone could only survive 4 years on average, as their lifespan got reduced every time they used time magic. The clones only had a small fraction of Carula's power, with some exceptions. And clone 19835 is one of those exceptions. All other clones were like a shell without substance, only focused on their duty. However, 19835 was different. She had emotions, enabling her not only to learn and use all of Carula's original power, but also have a higher lifespan. She worked as the leading Carula in one of the church's frontline bases. One day, however, Carula committed the biggest sin imaginable. She healed a young dragon who terrorized the church 8 years later. Even the sun god appeared to punish her for this huge sin. All Carulas made after her were destroyed, and she was deemed to be executed, when suddenly, time stopped. A child version of Carula appeared, asking her to become her servant. This was the dragon god, who had no real physical form, but shaped itself according to its believers' will. Carula didn't want to die, she wanted to be saved, and so she agreed to become the dragon god's servant. Not only the god bestowed her dragon blood, giving her the rank of a dragon monarch, whose power is only below the dragon god itself, but it also gave her a new name, Ultimatia. She later became a leader of the 13 dragon monarch group called Blood of the Wing. They went on multiple sprees, clapping humans because the dragon god said so. It started because the dragon god loved a pastry shop in Donapiru, a city in the kingdom of Lys. She protected the city from dragon attacks. Unfortunately, that pastry shop got robbed and went out of business. Since then, the dragon god became so sad that she threw a tantrum, as that's what kids do. And she decided to destroy the whole kingdom. After finishing the whole explanation on why they look like Ultimatia, and the Carulas ask Ragna to become a dragon scourge for them to help the refugees. He refuses, even when they promise good benefits. So, they also refuse to help the refugees because Starlia has failed to become a dragon scourge and Ragna won't take her place. Ragna sees a glimpse of light coming from one of the abandoned buildings. It's from Chimera, who is signaling him to come there. He asks the leading Carula why the church didn't help them. The Carula answers that they can only do so for those capable of becoming dragon scourges. Since a person must first prove that they are a miracle of God, Starlia failed to do so, but Ragna didn't. And that's the will of God. Ragna becomes furious and punches the table. If God is so great, why doesn't he come down and kill the dragons himself? He orders them to take in the refugees, and he'll clap Ultimatia in return. He takes Slime and heads to find Crimson in the abandoned building. Crimson heals him completely in the globe chamber. It's fixed now because it has self-repairing capabilities. Otherwise, Crimson would never forgive him. Plus, he had nothing to do the past 2 days, so he fixed and reconnected it to his base on the moon. They all go there and Ragna reveals that Starlia is still alive. Crimson and T believe that her head was cut off, meaning that she's dead. Ragna explains that at the end of the battle, he and Starlia connected deeply through their auras, and he still feels that connection. Plus, Waltakamui put her head back right after cutting it, and it stuck like a magnet. On top of that, he took her body with him, which he didn't have to. He could have just taken the head. However, that still doesn't prove anything to Crimson. Ragna cuts him off, wishing he could have told the soldiers that Starlia is still alive, and he wants to see her again. So, he asks Crimson for help because the battle is not over yet. But Crimson doesn't want to act on something unsure, even if Ragna feels strongly about it. They can't defeat the dragons right now because they have time control magic and Waltakamui on their side. They need an element of surprise to beat just time control alone, and they don't have it. Ragna offers to deal with Waltakamui while Crimson deals with Ultimatia. But Crimson needs time to prepare for that, and there's no benefit in fighting right now. Ragna believes that Starlia is benefit enough. She's an amazing person who they need to destroy the dragons. Crimson is in disbelief because he thought Ragna was on his side, not Starlia's. They made a promise, and he can't afford to lose him now. Ragna assures him that he won't die because he never dies. But Crimson thinks that's because of pure luck, which is laughable to Ragna. If that's the case, then he'll just stop relying on luck. All the memories he had with the unit starts playing in his mind, making him finally understands why he wants to fight now. He wants to save everyone so they can laugh together again. He won't ask Crimson for help anymore, but he will ask him to open the door back to Earth. Crimson realizes that he messed up. Ragna is no longer some nobody with an immense power he can control, and there's nothing he can do about it. He summons the door but warns that Ragna will regret it. When Ragna is about to open the door, he suddenly feels dizzy and falls to the floor. It's the poison he took when they first met. It's supposed to take effect when Ragna tries to leave Crimson. Crimson is disappointed in him, calling him an unusable tool. Luckily for him, he was only interested in his silverine battle arts. He can just recreate it in another person. He can also mess with his brain and make him a zombie. That would be hilarious. Unfortunately for him, though, Ragna wakes up right then. He's surprised that he's still alive because Crimson told him he'd die a painful death. Was he bluffing? Crimson denies this. He, too, doesn't understand why Ragna is still alive. He specifically used AI-powered gene-destroying nanomachines. Even if Ragna is half sword, he should be half dead at least. Crimson is so mad, and Ragna hits him on the head to calm him down, only to send him flying at the wall. He admits that he feels bad for breaking their promise, but Crimson's words don't move him at all. Chimera tries to jump him from behind, but he pins her down quickly. He recalls that when he first met Crimson in the future, he killed him and didn't see his heart in his body. He wants to know where it is because that's probably the reason his words don't have emotion. Starlia's unit managed to move him over and over because they put their lives on the line. Crimson Docent, he just schemes all the time. Besides, their chances of winning may be low but aren't zero. If Crimson can't take the challenge now, how will he wipe out all the bloodlines? Crimson is lost for words. Chimera transforms and tries to attack Ragna again, but he stops her and tells Ragna to do whatever he wants. Ragna leaves and Crimson goes to sleep. Ragna returns to the camp and finds the soldiers feeling better. They figured that Starlia is still alive. That's because Christopher's silver prosthetic arm can only move through her silverine manipulation, and it's still moving. They want to go rescue her and Ragna is coming with them. Meanwhile, Starlia is with Waltakamui in the capital. She's still alive, and when she wakes up, she becomes confused. Waltakamui explains that the head will reconnect when you put it back right after cutting. But she has a poison mark on her neck which will activate and clap her if Ragna and her unit come to her rescue. The mark was left by Oltozora, who is being bitter for losing Terictra. Suddenly, Waltakamui's arm starts to freeze from the inside, quickly spreading to his body and forcing him to regenerate. This has been happening since the fight thanks to the scars Ragna left on him. That's another reason why he's keeping Starlia alive. He wants to fight Ragna again, but at his best, and he wants Starlia to help him become his best. Starlia reminds him that she'll die when Ragna gets there, and he confirms. That's why he wants her to make a sword for Ragna, which can withstand his claw before that time comes. Starlia decides to hurry and make the sword so she doesn't die with regret. Crimson, in the meantime, is in bed, depressed. He checks on the situation at the capital via satellite. He notices that the dragons seem to be in a hurry and speculates that could be because Ultimacia can't use her time control magic at the moment. This makes it the perfect time to attack. So, he gathers his servants and prepares for battle alongside Ragna and Starlia's unit. Ragna and the unit leave with the help of Fu and the Carulas. As soon as they appear at the capital, the mark on Starlia's neck activates and chokes her. This is how Waltakamui knows that the enemy is here. The soldiers start descending to the ground while noticing that the sun isn't rising due to Nebulum's barrier. Borgias notices them too and starts attacking. Waltakamui waits for Ragna. The soldiers tell Ragna to go to him already, and he leaves. Nebulum feels another presence approaching but doesn't know from where. It's Crimson through his teleportation room, hovering above the barrier. He realizes that the dragons haven't stopped time, even though that would be to their biggest advantage. This confirms that they can't stop time. So, he deploys Golem's giant robot through spatial connection. Nebulum starts to panic because he wasn't expecting any interference and calls out to Borgias to intercept the machine. Ragna also notices that Crimson has arrived just like he had hoped as he heads to Waltakamui. He arrives only to see Starlia on the verge of death with Waltakamui waiting for him. He runs to her, and Waltakamui decides to step back to let them say their goodbyes. Ragna takes Starlia in his arms and sees her terrible state as the poison runs all over her body. He came for her just like he promised. But what could he do for someone who's dying? If he tries to freeze the poison, he'll just freeze her. Maybe the Solarians or Crimson could help, but there's no time. Starlia shows and tells him to take the sword she made for him. He takes it and remembers the silver comet from the dream. She apologizes for not being able to make a better sword than this, hence not keeping her promise. She regrets not being good enough because Ragna won't beat Waltakamui's claw with this sword. She coughs heavily and cries as she sees her end nearing. She will forge a powerful sword worthy of Ragna next time, but there won't be a next time for her. Ragna becomes anxious and agitated. He wants both of them to survive and laugh together. But if that can't happen, he wants her to watch him as he fights. He promises to win using this sword and clap Waltakamui. Even if she can't see him, he will shine so brightly that she will have no choice but to see him clearly. Nazarena arrives and takes her in her hands, letting Ragna begin his way to Waltakamui. If Starlia dies, he'll be sad, but he'll also be happy to have met her. So, she must watch until the end because from this point on, he'll be stronger than his future self. Waltakamui comes down and Ragna demands that he quickly turn into a dragon. But he wants to pick up from where they left off first and show him his claw. The claw can change its characteristics to suit the user, so it became a lightning claw when he grabbed it. It expands and transforms at lightning speed, demonstrating this as it becomes gigantic. It releases massive electrical shockwaves which destroy the ground. Ragna doesn't care for this, though. He just wants him to turn into a dragon already. Waltakamui throws an attack at him, and he instantly freezes it along with Waltakamui's arm with just one hand. He then quickly charges at him and cuts him in half, which excites Waltakamui a lot. He places his sword on his back, making it shine brightly. He wants Waltakamui to quickly turn into his most powerful form so he can crush him at his best. The sword shines even brighter on his back, making him float slightly above ground like some god. Waltakamui finds this extremely amusing as he regenerates. He starts comparing their weapons. His claw reaches 100% in the user's hands, but Ragna's sword takes the user to 120%. He finally becomes serious and transforms into a dragon. He attacks Ragna and Ragna blocks, using just his hands, which unleashes a vast amount of silverine. This creates a huge mess around them, prompting Nazarena to take Starlia and get out of there. Ragna sees them and sends them a sword to help propel them faster. He then focuses back on his enemy and charges at him for close combat, hitting him with more silverine which pushes him back a little. He continues to charge, but Waltakamui counters with his claw, causing them both a bit of a struggle. Waltakamui sees an opening and strikes Ragna with his tail, throwing him to the ground. He then expands the claw to pierce him from a distance, but Ragna dodges and gets back up. Waltakamui rushes at him, but he blocks, and they continue like that for a while until Waltakamui gains the upper hand. He sneaks behind Ragna and fires at him. Fortunately, the sword activates one of Starlia's barriers to block the attack. However, Waltakamui still manages to throw and pin Ragna to the ground using his claw. Ragna tries to freeze the claw while Waltakamui prepares to blast him with an electrical energy ball. He gets the claw off himself in time and blocks the attack with one of his hands. He transforms the other hand into a blade and cuts the attack in half, making it to Waltakamui, who he drives to the sky and cuts his arm off. Waltakamui decides to attack back before regenerating and Ragna defends himself. They continue like this while Nazarena watches from the ground outside the barrier with Starlia in her arms. She's admiring Ragna's light and telling it to Starlia. Starlia tells her to stop wasting her time with someone who's about to die and go. Nazarena becomes concerned, but realizes that Starlia isn't responsive anymore. She leaves while saying her farewell, leaving Starlia's body there. Meanwhile, Nebulum continues to feel Crimson's presence. He put Ultimacia in an alternate space, and he's worried Crimson is there to take control of that space. Crimson starts casting a spell and breaches Nebulum's barriers. Nebulum starts to panic because Crimson is too fast. He's undoing all their efforts in a matter of seconds. But Nebulum becomes motivated to do better. He works hard to firewall the barrier and foil Crimson's efforts. Unfortunately, Smile appears and swallows him up. Crimson finally succeeds in breaching all the barriers and arrives in the alternate space. He walks quietly towards Ultimacia, who's facing the other way, and points a gun at her. Before he shoots, Nebulum screams her name to warn her. Ultimacia gets startled and looks back to see Crimson shooting her on the shoulder. She uses that blood to create a fire and throw it at him. He dodges and lands on a different platform. He accesses the space's system and manipulates it to lock the two of them in there and change the speed of time. He doesn't want anyone to get in, and he doesn't want Ultimacia to use her magic outside of the space. She realizes that her wound isn't healing and remembers that Walter Kamui told her to get angry in these kinds of situations. So, she becomes enraged and transforms into her dragon form. Before this, Crimson went to retrieve his heart where he had hidden it. His monarch version suddenly appeared and asked him to discuss this decision with an objective version of himself first. The personas, Elise and Veronica, appeared as well. Both of them didn't understand the reason he was doing this, but he had decided that Ragna was worth risking his life for. Even if he wouldn't be able to recover even 10% of his power with the heart, he'd be able to clap Ultimacia easily. So, he retrieves and returns it to its place, making the monarch merge with him. Now he can unleash his true power on Ultimacia. She shoots him with a burst of energy beams, but Crimson dodges and employs his flashbangs. Because time is slow in this space, the balls only flash a little, causing Ultimacia to hide inside a shield. Crimson shoots at her, but the bullets bounce off the shield. She uses her tail to strike him, but he dodges and recounts how he created the bullets to clap himself with. They disrupt blood flow and render magic useless. And since he and Ultimacia use time control, their blood flow is similar, meaning that the bullets will work on her too. All he has to do is hit her heart and she's gone. He shoots another bullet which he accelerates 50 times as the flashbangs illuminate a little again. This causes her to wince in pain, and the bullet hits her wing, shattering the shield in the process. This also knocks her off the platform, and she falls onto a broken pillar with Crimson following her behind. He accelerates another bullet as she cowers and lets out a tremendous burst of energy in fear. As the battle continues, Christopher and Fu take out Ulto Zora. But before he goes, he uses his secret weapon to clap them too. Ike goes over to him and freezes him quickly. Crimson continues his battle with Ultimacia and realizes that her energy bursts are too much. She may be the weakest monarch of all, but she has a huge amount of magic reserved. She can overpower most superior dragons just by intensely attacking at random, which is what she's doing to Crimson right now, making it hard for him to get close to her. So, he uses his psychic assault to make the space quiet, amplify his voice, and torture her. He doesn't think she's anything like Carula, which is why she's trying to become monster and feel special. She's just a clone. This alarms her, especially when he insults the dragon god as well. It literally made her destroy a country over a cake shop, and that's childish. He describes it the same way she sees it. A young Carula who looks just like her and her sisters who died because of her. Ultimacia starts panicking. She reflects on her actions from the past. She just wanted to be kind on. She didn't want to choose who to save because she wanted to save herself the most. Meanwhile, Borgias has become enraged over Nebulum's death and goes into the room where Slime is still munching on him. He obliterates him along with the building, leaving behind the skeleton of Nebulum. He becomes devastated, but remembers to focus on the most important thing at hand, protecting Ultimacia. After mourning for Nebulum, he manages to break the walls of the alternate space. He does it just in time when Crimson is about to fire at Ultimacia, who's crying in terror. He calls out to her so she can escape through the hole he made in the wall. Ultimacia tries to get away, but Crimson chases after her. She tries to blast him with more energy bursts, but he dodges all of them and continues to chase her, firing one more shot. Outside, Chimera was unfortunately clapped, but Snake, her tail, is still alive. He switches places with her to manifest in his human form. Borgias instantly feels his presence. They served Crimson together before, so he's shocked that he's still alive. He becomes enraged at his betrayal to the dragon god and unleashes his power in anger. He shoots out an enormous magic slash, but it doesn't reach Snake. Snake, on the other hand, uses an extremely powerful move called World Collapse, causing Borgias to explode from the inside. The move also destroys everything in its way, including the alternate space and Nebulum's barrier. This injures both Ultimacia and Crimson, throwing them out to the ground. Snake apologizes to Crimson before collapsing to the floor and dying from his own move. The sun illuminates them all since the barrier is gone, and Borgias bursts into flames. He calls out to Walter Kamui to protect Ultimacia as he's the only one left now. But right then, Ike finishes him off by decapitating him. The remaining unit run towards Ultimacia, who's injured on the ground. Walter Kamui is still battling with Ragna. And despite being superior in speed, he's having a hard time. Ragna is giving it his all, attacking, defending, and dodging him. Walter Kamui uses his claw to attack him in all directions, bending it at will. And Ragna dodges like crazy before counterattacking. Walter Kamui blocks the attack, running the risk of freezing his claw. He blocks another attack while realizing that Ragna is starting to overpower him. Ragna cuts both of his legs and his tail, making him let go of his claw. He then keeps going and increases his Silverine to hit Waltkamui with a hunting flash. This makes Waltkamui decide to go all out as well. He grabs his claw and counters Ragna's attack. Ultimacia gets up as Ike and the others get to her and defends herself. But she gets stabbed on the head by Nazarena and squeals in pain, causing her to shoot her energy bursts at random. These take out multiple soldiers and even manage to get Nazarena off of her. Waltkamui, on the other hand, uses the powerful lightning god battle arts, which heavily increase gravity and pull everyone down, including Ultimacia. Ragna is startled to see this. Waltkamui has transformed and fused with his claw, enabling him to turn his arms into blades. Ragna prepares himself with his arm blade as well, but Waltkamui is too sharp. He cuts his blade so quickly that Ragna doesn't even see it happen. He also moves really fast that Ragna can't anticipate his attacks or counterattack. However, Ragna manages to land a punch, yet still gets kneed on the gut. The knee sharpens like the claw and pierces him. Waltkamui then decapitates him while increasing his electric charge. On the ground, Crimson is losing a lot of blood due to his injury. He hears Slime wandering around, looking for food. He calls out to him to come with a girl in Starlia's unit. Right then, a massive explosion from Waltkamui's attack occurs. The shockwave from it blows everything away. Ragna's head goes flying as Waltkamui wishes to see the Clawed Monarch now. He has reached his peak and wants to find her, clap her, and the Dragon God too. Ragna surprises him with another massive hunting flash, sending him to the depths of the ground and causing his own sword to crack. He places his head back on his body and uses Silverine to heal himself. He's still in pain, but he refuses to let Waltkamui do what he wants. Ultimacia crawls over to where Waltkamui has fallen and screams his name. He screams back for her to stay out of his fight. Ragna gets in position and Waltkamui realizes that he'll use the same move as the first time they fought. But he isn't too worried because he can withstand this move. He speedily charges at him. As he does, he uses an extra move to transform to his highest form, capable of even crushing the sun. Before he gets to Ragna thinks about exhausting everything has and become absolute. He needs to hone the hunting flash because it's not enough to take down Waltkamui. It must become faster than sound and lightning and deal damage instantly. He increases his power to reach this desire and cuts up Waltkamui 2 times before he can land a strike. The vast amount of power released causes a grand explosion which eradicates Waltkamui as the Clawed Monarch watches. She comments that Waltkamui had defeated all his enemies using speed just to be defeated by speed too. As he dies, he remembers how he stole every power he found and made it his. But he can't steal Ragna's power because he doesn't even understand how it's achieved. He throws his claw at Ragna, who blocks it with his sword before collapsing to the ground. Ultimacia witnesses everything and is left shocked that Waltkamui is gone. She can't believe it. She can't even accept it. She screams out loudly, releasing a monstrous amount of magic that causes time to stop. When she realizes this, she becomes hopeful that her power is back and she'll rewind time to bring everyone back. But as she tries to do that, the girl in Starlia's unit shoots her in the heart using Crimson's gun. She was tasked by Crimson to do so, and when she heard Ultimacia wishing to rewind time, she started having doubts. If she let her do it, she would see her comrades again. But before she knew it, the gun went off. She falls to her knees and cries for what she has done while Ultimacia dies on the ground. After, Crimson locks his heart away again and sheds his monarch body to return to his usual one. The battlefield is quiet with the dead bodies of soldiers littered on the rubble. It's not a good-looking scene, not even for Crimson. Ragna is sitting there, holding on to the remaining piece of his sword and staring at it. He has a vision of his future self, asking if he feels regretful. He says no because he wouldn't have won without everyone. He does feel sad, though. His future self walks towards him and changes into Crimson, who asks if he'll quit because of sadness. He says no. He can endure sadness, but he will never stop clapping dragons, even if he does it alone. Crimson then wakes him up, and he wakes up to find himself in a pod. Crimson and Golem take him to a room where Starlia is sleeping. Nazarena, Slime, and Ike are there too. Crimson tells him that Starlia has been completely healed from Ultozora's poison. When Ike was about to end Ultozora in the battle, Ultozora gave him the antidote to the poison as a reward. So, she's physically fine, but she's in a coma. Ragna walks over to her bed. He remembers when she asked him to be with her because she didn't want him to end up miserable. He's so happy to see that she's alive and somewhat well. He cries, reassuring himself that she'll wake up one day and make him a sword just like she promised. Despite everything that's happened, a win is a win, and all of Starlia's soldiers, dead or alive, agree. After, Ragnar packs the piece of his sword, his cloak, and makes his way to hunt the next bloodline of dragons. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.